Hi, it's John, and we are in Denver, Colorado, exploring the city's most famous street, the notorious Colfax Avenue, whose history spans several eras of good times and bad. Like an arrow through the heart, this boulevard of broken dreams pierces the city's core as it runs from the Great Plain to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Today we are visiting a 2.5-mile stretch of this over 26-mile-long street, a lively section of East Colfax that begins at Colorado Boulevard and ends where east meets west at Broadway. Our journey begins with a brief look at the inspiring Renaissance Revival-style architecture of the National Jewish Hospital, constructed in the 1920s. The hospital actually started nearby in 1899 through the tireless work of Frances Weisbarth Jacobs, Colorado's Mother of Charity, one of the founders of what would eventually become the United Way. And Mrs. Jacobs made it her mission in life to provide care for those who had spent all they had just getting here. Nearby is the first of a few reminders that in its earliest era, Colfax was a residential street lined with mansions of the rich and famous, many of whom were robber barons, who, having made it big in mining, needed to flaunt their newfound wealth. As the street began transforming into a commercial district, most of these grand old homes were torn down, but a few remain, and some still have storefronts attached. Our next stop to the west is Hooked on Colfax, a warm and welcoming coffee shop that serves as a cocktail bar in the evening and offers a number of different spaces in which to relax. We had a very vibrant violet-flavored coffee and a phenomenal homemade vegan cinnamon roll. We relaxed on the sidewalk out front and watched Colfax come alive, and it turned out to be one of the memorable highlights of this trip. It was a great spot to observe a few of the quirky but lovable mom-and-pop shops that are a key component to the street's current era, that of being a hallowed hipster haunt. Also nearby are a few reminders of the street's most famous era, that of Gateway to the Rockies. In 1926, the Special Highway Act created the United States numbered highway system, and Highway 40 was routed on its coast-to-coast journey from Atlantic City, New Jersey to San Francisco through Denver along Colfax Avenue. The result was an ever-increasing influx of vacationers, especially after World War II, who found a plethora of motels and diners along the street as they paused on their road trips into the wilds of the Rocky Mountains. Competition for tourist dollars became fierce, and luring them in became the job of flashy, attention-grabbing neon signs, so much so that this era could also be called the Eon of Neon. For those seeking luxury, there was the fabulous Fountain Inn, from whose cocktail lounge, the Gold Room, emanated the soothing sounds of mellow mid-century jazz. Continuing to the west, we arrive at what was once another one of Denver's post-war cultural icons, the Bonfils Memorial Theater. Built in 1953 by newspaper magnate Helen Bonfils, this art moderne structure seated 550 people and hosted over 400 productions before the curtains fell for the last time in 1986. After it sat vacant for 20 years, it became home to the East Colfax location of Denver's beloved tattered cover bookstore. Originally a tiny bookshop, opened in 1971, it grew to several locations and national prominence during the over 40-year management of its second owner, First Amendment warrior Joyce Meskies. Early on, Meskies created a haven for book lovers with the then radical concept of a store in which customers could simply plop down the good book and read it. After finding some good books and hanging out here a little too long, we went next door to another longtime Denver retail icon, a venue of vinyl called Twist and Shout. Originally opening in 1988 as a small record store, it is today a much larger record store. With its massive collection of rare and hard-to-find items, it is truly a music lover's dream. And I was trying to find a diamond in the rough from a local artist, and I think I may have found it just by looking at the collars on these guys. We now headed further west for lunch at the quiet and unpretentious Spices Cafe. We savored wonderful sandwiches as we sat at a counter along a row of windows watching the sun try to break through the overcast. Afterwards, it was time to backtrack a little and visit a marvelously mysterious little shop called the Learned Bloomer. It was like visiting a museum of exotic oddities, except these fascinating items were all available for purchase. Continuing our journey, we are now entering the stretch that more than any other was associated with the avenue's fall from grace. Another highway act, this one in 1956, created the interstate highway system, and once I-70 was completed through the city in the 1960s, the tourist trade on Colfax simply died away. At the same time, the urban renewal movement was literally sweeping the nation and began cleaning up Denver's notoriously blighted downtown. A slew of dislocated massage parlors, strip clubs, and topless bars found their way onto what rapidly became Denver's wickedest street. Colfax was no longer the famous gateway to the Rockies. It had become instead, and would remain so for decades, a gateway to violence, addiction, prostitution, and homelessness. In the late 80s, Denver's lower downtown, or LoDo, underwent a stunning transition from seedy warehouse district to an upscale, live and work neighborhood sought after by young, loft-loving professionals and entrepreneurs. Communities and neighborhoods along Colfax took notice and began to make concerted efforts at turning the street around. By the early 2000s, East Colfax had been almost completely reclaimed, looking much as it does today with its friendly coffee shops, quiet cafes and bakeries, abundant music venues, and endearing dive bars. However, this laid-back and easygoing hipster vibe is under threat from Denver's overheating real estate market, which is developing some cracks in this venerable old street's well-worn pavement. The forest of construction cranes that are currently filling Denver's skyline have not spared Colfax. High-end apartment buildings are going up along with everyone's rent, and the ultimate effect will no doubt change forever the street's unique, everyman character. Perhaps a new era is being ushered in on this avenue of many eras, one that looks a little bit like the Gilded Age of old, when the rich displayed their wealth for all the homeless to see. Nearing the end of East Colfax, we visit a place that continues to see all the homeless. The Archdiocese of Denver provides over 50,000 free meals a year. Just on the other side of these beautiful brass doors, which are open to everyone, is a quiet retreat, a refuge from the raucous hubbub of the bustling boulevard outside. Containing 75 gorgeous stained glass windows, the French Gothic-style Roman Catholic cathedral was constructed in the shape of a Latin cross. Its first Mass was held in 1912, and they are now held multiple times daily. So if you visit, check the Mass schedule, as they are generally well attended and close parking is scarce. On our way to tour the state capitol, we stop in at Capitol Hill Books, a longtime bookseller in this location that offers a nice collection of vintage reading material. A final stop before East meets West at Broadway, the Colorado State Capitol is open to the public and guided tours are available free of charge. Its floors are tiled with Yule marble that came from Marble, Colorado, while the walls are adorned with Colorado rose onyx from Beulah. Both the House and Senate chambers have been recently restored to their former glory, displaying their original ornate decor, skylights, and chandeliers. Just below the dome, a small museum describes in detail the Capitol building's intriguing past. A final climb up to the dome reveals a stunning panorama reaching from downtown Denver all the way to the Rocky Mountains. For our last stop of the day, we head back east, almost to where we began our journey early this morning. Trattoria Stella is a wonderful, locally owned Italian bistro located next door to Hooked on Colfax, a coffee shop we enjoyed so much earlier. After a busy day of exploring the city, there is nothing quite like spending a rainy evening in a cozy dinner spot at a table full of delectable dishes inside a fine old building. As we say goodbye to this fun-loving stretch of East Colfax, we wish the best to all who frequent this hipster highway. Bye for now.